Hello, everyone. My name is Cyrus, and the purpose of me recording this was because last night I attempted to do this on Facebook and it didn't work out too well. So I figured I would take the time this morning to do this in the way that I felt it should be done. Again, my name is Cyrus. I am a practitioner of acupuncture and Oriental medicine located in Fort Washington, Pennsylvania. I'm also an ordained Buddhist priest. And it's from that and other experiences I'm drawing in order to make this presentation. This presentation is about, what is meditation and mindfulness? And there's been a lot of especially it's vogue these days that everybody's into mindfulness and meditation and what have you. And there's some, in my view, there are some things that need to be said about it in order to bring a little bit more accuracy to what this practice is. Having said that, anything that we can do in order to elevate our consciousness beyond where it is at the moment, it's always a good thing to do. All right, so having said that, I'm going to share my screen and we'll begin. Okay, now I'm going to leave this in this mode in order to navigate around this PowerPoint. I'm not going to share everything on this PowerPoint presentation, but it will help. It will help. Okay, so as I said, I am a practitioner of acupuncture and Oriental medicine. I hold a doctorate in acupuncture. My Dharma name as a Buddhist priest is Gwondu Prajna, which essentially means liberated fist, okay? Or liberated fist of wisdom. All right. So, so here we go. That's me. All right, and this is a depiction of Avalokiteshvara, who is known by many as Kuan Yin, which is the goddess of god of healing and compassion. And there are some meditations along this line. People do that. So the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, known in Chinese as Kuan Yin, is the embodiment of the virtue of compassion. And because the most important deity in Buddhism around the 6th century CE represented different manifestations throughout Asia. Avalokiteshvara is usually identified as a small seated Buddha. And from time to time, I'm going to interject some things here that is not on the PowerPoint. And this is an appropriate point for me to say that Buddhism, or use of that term in common modern discourse, didn't occur up until around circa 1850. And it appeared in a piece of work by an American, his name is James Joinville, who was a publisher in the New England area of the United States. And he wrote a book called The Spiritual Practices of the People of Ceylon. And in that book, he coined the term Buddhism. Now, the term Bud or Buddha is the awakened one, or one who is awake. So in terms of language, you don't say one who is awake ism. It's not an ism, really. Prior to that point, the correct reference to this practice was Dharma Vinaya. Okay, now let me get to this point. This is a depiction of Bodhidharma, who was the 38th patriarch of the Dharma, or as you would say, Buddhism. And he arrived in China and gave birth to what you know as Zen, okay? That he is the one who created that particular school of thought within the Dharma, right? Now, by way of introduction, in modernity, there are a lot of talk about the practice of, there's a lot of talk and practice of different forms of what in the Western world we frame as meditation. There are equally much confusion and understanding as to what this practice is and what it's not. Moreover, there's just as much confusion to what this practice should be called. Once a proper reference is established, what is this practice? I think it would help to look at a few definition of terms. Now, this personality is Dahui Hujue. Dahui is in my particular lineage, and without reading what he was about, he gave birth to a school of Buddhism, which is known as Kanhua Chan. And what that is Kanhua Chan, he introduced this practice of Kanhua Chan or Huado, or inspecting the critical phase of a koan story. This method, called the Chan school of Kongan introspection. So what he did was basically created this school of meditation. I mean, you can look at this instead of meditation, and you'll see why he had a problem with this whole thing about silent illumination, which means sitting until you awake, you awaken. Dahui was a vigorous critic of what he called the heretical Chan of silent illumination of the Saodong school. So, right off the bat, you would see that he was very critical of this idea of meditation, sitting in long hours of meditation until you experience some form of awakening. So as I said, Dahui founded the Kanhua Chan school and the practice of Kanhwado, which means inspecting the critical phase of a Kongan story through introspection. And I'll go over this, but you're probably wondering at this point, what is that, right? What is a Kongan story? Well, here's one for you, and I think I can say this at this point as we progress. A Kongan story is a paradoxical statement that interrupts or stops discursive thinking. That's what that is. So here's an example that you may be familiar with. The sound of one hand clapping, or if a tree falls in the forest and there's no one there to hear it, does it make a sound? Or one of my personal favorites, what did your face look like before you were conceived by your parents? So when you think about those statements, they are paradoxical statements that causes your thinking brain to stop for a moment. And as you become better at it, the period of time where your brain stops moving, that's the noun. That's the entry into this realm of consciousness that doesn't attach to any particular thing. In the martial arts, we call it no mind. Mushin, no mind. Okay, so, but anyway, Dahui, his Pujue, his posthumous title was Universal Enlightenment, or it should actually be said Universal Awakening or Universal Liberation, because the word enlightenment really isn't mentioned in any of the original scriptures in Buddhist literature. So as I said, this term, and then there's next is the term Kung Fu. Everybody, that came about in the martial arts in the late 60s and 70s. This whole idea of Kung Fu. It was not originally, Kung Fu was not originally associated with the martial arts. It became that way, but the term is something that Dawei used liberally as a way of describing the practice, which has to do with the expenditure of time and energy in any particular effort. So the term Kung Fu, as I said, expenditure of energy and time in working. The term came to be associated with martial arts in modernity, but was originally associated with Buddhist practice or cultivation. So that should bring some accuracy to that misuse. And as I said, Huado or Huatao is a pivotal phrase from a Chan dialogue or other resources. And here's here's what, as those of us who are in the monastic tradition, we are usually taught the first Huado or word head or Kongan or Koan is, what is this? Or who am I? So whenever your mind goes somewhere and you fixate on a particular thing, you ask the question, what is this? Followed by, who am I? But that question is not just something within your linguistic framework. It's asked with your entire being. Not that you would receive an answer, but it's an entry point. It's a point of inquiry. All right? While observing while you maintain the observing presence. Okay? So there you go. Dahui's teachings on Kanwa practice became the standard for the Linje school, which I said my particular lineage. I'm in his particular lineage, practiced in China. And so and here, let me say that when you use the word meditation, it actually comes from the term, the Sanskrit word or term, jhana. Okay, and let me see if I can get there really fast. Okay, anyway. It comes from the term jhana, that's D-H-Y-A-N-A, and it's pronounced with a J sound to it, jhana. That's the method that the historical Buddha used in order to achieve liberation. And mind you, again, not enlightenment. He became liberated after sitting under the supposed Bodhi tree for 49 days or however long he sat there. So jhana was the mechanism, the method he used, to achieve moksha or liberation. Now, when this practice found its way into China, it became Chan. It found its way to Korea, it became Sun. It's found its way into Japan, it became Zen. It found its way into Vietnam, it became Tien. Now, all of those that I just mentioned are nothing more than transliterations of jhana. Okay, so Zen is very much a part of our linguistic cultural expressions these days. There's Zen this and Zen that, and the Zen of motorcycle reading, bike riding, and the Zen of fishing, and the Zen of everything these days. But what exactly does Zen mean? Zen is nothing more than a transliteration of jhana, which means mindful contemplation, not meditation. Okay? So Dahui exerted a strong influence on the Japanese Renzai teacher Hakuin Ikaku, who also taught great doubt as necessary to awaken. So the historical Buddha would often say, little doubt, little awakening. Great doubt, great awakening. In other words, you got to have an inquisitive and seeking mind, which is something that's discouraged even in a lot of Western cultures. You do it this way and you don't question what it is you're doing. You simply do it, and eventually you'll figure it out. The martial arts is sort of was taught that way when I started out over 50 years ago. You don't question what your teacher is teaching you. You embody that particular school's system without question, and you practice, and you probably never move beyond the confines of that particular school of thought. When spiritual teachers such as the Buddha taught quite differently. Okay, so Dahue was very critical of extended seated meditations. I'm only using Dahue as a, how should I put it, as a reference point to show that there are other methods of awakening or achieving liberation other than seated meditation. All right, so Dahue felt that the old barbarian Bodhidharma, who I mentioned, the first patriarch of Chan or Zen Buddhism, suffered a defeat when he sat facing a wall for 9 years. Dahue stated that what a pity that he was mistaken all of that time. The result was the followers of silent elimination, they sit there for years. Now, in martial arts practice, and since that's one of my main passions, I remember as I was coming up in the arts, my teachers would say, you would bow in, chariot, blah, 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 and then he would say mukso or muknyam, meaning meditation. And everyone stands there or sits there with their legs crossed and their hands open like this, and God knows what they're thinking about. All right. Now that I look back on it, having participated in that kind of practice, my thinking at the time was, all right, let's get on with the practice. Okay, let's get on with doing roundhouse kick and side kick and reverse punch and high block, and let's get on with it, So, and then at the end of class, the same thing, and that's supposedly clear your mind, right? But the problem there is that you clear your mind, and we talk about mushin or empty mind or no mind. Really, that's not easily achieved. It's impossible to stop your brain from thinking. Your brain is a thinking machine. It's designed to do just that. So if you're sitting there trying to empty your mind, it's an exercise in futility, actually. That's not what the practice really is. The practice is a very personal practice. I can teach my students or conduct classes on the concept and practice of meditation, but that's not necessarily done in the classroom. I'm teaching them how to take it home and practice. That's really what this is. It's a very personal journey, okay? But anyway, Dahue further stated that these practitioners, they fervently close their eyes and assume the appearance of death. They call it stillness sitting, mind contemplation, and silence as illumination. In turn, they take perverse and use, profuse practice and use it to lead ignorant mediocrities, saying that if you can attain stillness in sitting for one day, that's one day of Gong Fu. And he was totally against that. Okay, so what I'm about to share here with you was shared with me by my late mentor and teacher, Venerable Wanji Dharma, the founder of the Five Mountains Zen Order, which I'm a part of. What he shared with me is that the Sanskrit word smrti originally meant to remember or to recollect. Okay? Vedic remembering, it's the Vedic term for remembering the sacred text. Okay? The English word mindful, nyan, contains two concatenated words in Chinese script. The first character is the Chinese character for today or this moment. The second character is the Chinese character for heart, mind, which is the same in the Asian language. It's the same character for mind and heart. And there's reasons for that, okay? When the two characters are combined, it equates to moment mind. The Buddhist teachings instruct us to focus on the present, heart mind, and you will have a peaceful mind. The present is the most important thing. The present contains the now, and it actually informs the past and the future. So all of the spiritual masters talked about this thing about being fully present in the now, okay? In the Gospel of Thomas, you know, what Jesus said about that was, if those who lead you say the kingdom is in the sky, then the birds of the sky will precede you. If they say to you it's in the sea, then the fish would precede you. Rather, the kingdom is inside of you. It's outside of you. Actually, he continued to say, it's all around you. Split a piece of wood and you'll find me there. Turn over a rock and you'll find me there. So when you come to, he also continued to say that when you come to know yourselves, then you will become known and you will realize that it is you who are the sons of the living Father. But if you will not know yourselves, you dwell in poverty, and it is you who are that poverty, okay? So we come to this whole idea of meditation, if there's such a thing, that's embodied in the Satipatthana Sutra, in which the Buddha gave his definitive teaching about what this is. So it's the Buddha's most detailed teaching on the practice of mindfulness, which is the 8th step in the Eightfold Noble Path, which is the remedy for suffering, okay? The discourse on the foundation of mindfulness. And here's what he said about this. There's 4 foundations of mindfulness, if there's such a thing. First, there's contemplation of body. Second, contemplation of feeling. Third, contemplation of mind. And fourth, contemplation of the Dharma, which is the teachings or the mystic law. The Buddha declared the following in his discourse on the foundation of mindful contemplation, which is jhana. The one-way path, which is what he called magga. Now, the Buddha called what he was doing as the one-way path, and some say the middle road, and there's reasons why he said that. But he basically, magga means path. It's the same as saying do in Japanese or in Korean, or Tao, same thing. Incidentally, Lao Tzu called it the same thing, the way, Tao. Jesus called it the same thing when asked, what was he teaching? He said, I'm teaching the way. So it's interesting to me that all of these spiritual masters taught the same conceptual framework and for overcoming suffering and the attainment of nirvana. Now, everybody thinks that the term nirvana means bliss, you know, oh, I'm in nirvana. No, it has nothing to do with bliss. That's a whole different thing, okay? That what nirvana means is a blowing out of existence. That's what the term in Sanskrit really means, to blow out. So what that amounts to is imagine a candle in front of you, and it's a lit candle, and you go, boom, the flame is out. You're gone. You become one with the source. That's what it is. In other words, my teacher, Venerable Wanji Dharma, achieved nirvana back in December 20th, 2001. He blew out of existence. He joined with the source. That's really what that means. The expressions of 4 foundation of mindfulness refers to the mindful contemplation of 4 objective domains that are between them comprise the entire field of human experience, which is the body, feelings, states of mind, and the Dharma itself, which he left undefined. It's interesting to note that this exhaustive amount of literature and teachings that came about as a result of his ministry, that he left it undefined. In the same way, you know, when he was about to achieve nirvana or blowing out, his disciples was worried about who he was going to leave in charge, who would inherit his legacy. And he said to them, no, let the Dharma be your teacher, be a light unto yourselves. He never left a successor. But you saw what happened, okay? There's many schools of Buddhism, and due to it moving from culture to culture and considering cultural appropriation, that's what happens. Now we, even here in the United, there is Chinese Buddhism, which is what they call Chan. There is Korean Buddhism, what they call Sun. There is Japanese Buddhism, which is Zen. And then there is Vietnamese, which they call Tien. And now there's American Buddhism. So American Buddhism is now the new petal in the lotus flower, so to speak. It's interesting. And that's quickly emerging. So because the way these practices occur in these various cultures is very much influenced by the cultural norms, their ideas about life and death as a people, and what have you, shamanism and all that stuff, becomes a part of the practice. So Zen as we know it today, or what you want to call Zen or jhana, in China, it became what it is, Chan Buddhism, because it's a combination of Taoism and the original teachings of the Buddha. So here you see an example of a cultural practice, which is Taoism, combining with the Dharma to create what's known as Chan Buddhism in China. All right. So many of us, study the Tao Te Ching, which is a major text having to do with Taoism. All right. So the four foundations, like I said, again, contemplation of body, contemplation of feelings, contemplation of mind, contemplation of the teachings. And you can engage in any one of those practices and it could be considered meditation. Okay. So the Buddha talked about contemplation of body, and the first is the mindfulness of breathing. So what he's saying here about that is that just be mindful when one breathes in and breathes out. The awareness of breath cuts through the complexities of discursive thinking, pulling back from mental meandering and anchoring the mind securely in the present. Okay. Well, the contemplation of body is concerned with the material side of existence, the middle two with the mental side of the foundations of mindfulness, or whatever you want to call it, right? And it has to do with the exploration of experience in ways reflecting the goal of teaching the four unfold in a definite sequence. The four of these things unfold in a definite sequence, starting with the body as the coarsest form of existence. That's the material world. And cultivating in the last, which is the subtlest, which is the mind, okay? So, this is just a repeat. But anyway, this whole thing about mindfulness of all four postures, with the contemplation of postures illuminates the impersonal nature of body. So when you look at the four postures that the Buddha talked about, revealing it to be a configuration of living matter and subject to the directing influence of volition. So whether you're lying down, sitting, standing, walking, it doesn't matter. As you move through your day, from the time you wake up in the morning, you're lying, you sit at the edge of your bed, you stand up and you move, right? In other words, the Buddha is saying that in all of those postures, as you approximate them throughout the entire day, you should be mindful. So at this point, I would say that you don't sit on your cushion, meditation cushion, for 2-3 hours, and then you get up and get dressed and you leave your home, you get in your car, you enter the stream of traffic and somebody cuts you off and you shoot them the bird or you call them some dirty name. That is not what it's about, okay? Because one of the things that this practice uh, is about say yes to what is. That's it. Whatever is occurring in the moment, you welcome it as a platform for evolution. That's what meditation really means. It's a platform for evolution. Whatever is happening in front of you, you simply accept it, you welcome it while being the observing presence. And the part of you that's being the observing presence is the real you, all right? You don't make judgments about it, you simply welcome it and accept it. Now, as you move beyond that, you become non-reactive. In other words, whatever happens, you don't react. If you do react, it's like, how should I put it? It's like embodying this whole concept again of no mind. Because if you welcome whatever this is in the moment, and you become the participant observer in the moment, then your response comes out of a total free associative response about what's taking place in that moment. So it's appropriate. It's not a question of right and wrong, because that's relative. In Buddhism, we talk about the relative and the absolute, right? So those things are not, they're part of each other. That's the yin yang or om yang, or the yin yo symbol, right? The relative and the absolute. All right. So that's what Mushin means. Okay. So this applies mindfulness to the diverse activities of daily life. When performing any action, one knows exactly what one is doing and why one is doing it. In this way, such ordinary actions as going out and coming back, looking ahead, looking aside, bending and stretching the limbs, dressing, eating, drinking, urinating, defecating, falling asleep, waking up, speaking, and remaining silent, all become a part of the process of meditative cultivation. And that is a very important statement, okay? Everyday life itself becomes fully bodied practice, and the practice becomes fully bodied in everyday life. So that's when my teacher talks about moment mind, that's exactly what he's making reference to. Is that your whole life becomes the practice, not spending 20 minutes in meditation. I mean, you can do that because it's beneficial, especially in the turbulent times we're living in. Taking 20 minutes or an hour out of your day to sit quietly and just be while the world crashes around you is not a bad practice either, right? All right, so the rest of this becomes really existential, which I don't really need to go into. There are some terms that I want to just bring your attention to, and I mentioned this earlier, that the Buddha is one who is awakened. Everyone is a potential Buddha. Anyone who has awoken to his or her divine nature. Jhana, as I mentioned before, is the seventh of the Eightfold Noble Path, Magga, building upon asana, which is physical posture, pranayama, breath control, control of the senses, moving the focus to the inside, and dharana, concentration. The word jhana comes from the Sanskrit word dhai, meaning to think of, or mindful contemplation, as I said before. Jhana is the vehicle the Buddha used to achieve moksha or liberation. Bodhi, meaning awakening and not necessarily enlightenment. Okay, so there's a whole lot more here to this, but I'm not going to, well, let's look at Vipassana. You know, there's some secular organization out there that do what they call Vipassana, or special seeing, or it's a, you know, insight meditation. Again, it's just one of the many descriptions of what meditation is. And it's a very eclectic practice is multifactorial. It's just not focusing on one thing, and that becomes the entire experience of the Dharma. That's not it. I see the same thing happening in the martial arts. You know, they give martial arts is named by its founder, and the focus is on one particular aspect of this vast experience. Okay, so it means it's insight or special seeing is a Buddhist term that was often translated as insight. The Pali Canon, which is one of the exhaustive literature on the Dharma, describes it as one of two qualities of mind which is developed in Buddhist mindful contemplation, being samatha. Now, samatha in Pali or samatha in Sanskrit is a Buddhist term that is often translated as calm abiding. That's another form of meditation that's out there. Or mind calmness. The Pali Canon describes it as one of two qualities of mind which is developed by bhavana in Buddhist meditation or Buddhist mindfulness contemplation. The other being vipassana, clear seeing and insight. Samatha is said to be achieved by practicing a single pointed meditation. And again, another form of meditation, okay? So this is a picture or a depiction of Buddha Dharma sitting facing that wall for 9 years. But having talked about Buddha Dharma, who created the Zen tradition as we know it today, regardless of culture, or Jhana tradition, this is one of my favorite sayings, because anyone can achieve liberation or awakening. What he said was, when asked by the emperor, what, Bodhidharma said he brought with him a special nothing. So when the emperor at the time asked him, what is that special nothing? He said, a special transmission outside of the scriptures, no dependence on words and letters, direct pointing at the mind of man and seeing into one's nature and the attainment of Buddhahood. Of course, that really upset the emperor at the time, because the emperor at the time, I guess, having supported the spread of Buddhism throughout China by building temples and what have you, he felt like Bodhidharma was giving him the runaround, and that didn't go over well. Okay. So the thing about I would like to mention also is that this whole idea of moment-to-moment mind and let your daily life reflect that presence of being in the now. Actually, and I'm not sure if this personality really existed or not. His name is Wei Nang. Wei Nang, eventually, he was a country bumpkin, and he all he did was roam the forest every day and pick up kindling wood for fire and worked in the kitchen and what have you. And he eventually became the chief abbot of a major temple in China. And there were close to 500 monks at this temple. This temple was huge. So imagine 500 monks sitting around in meditation for 8 hours a day, 7 days a week. What would happen to the temple? It would fall apart and deteriorate. So he assigned tasks to various groups of monks. Oh, this week you work in the kitchen, you work in the garden, you sweep the temple grounds, you go collect water and chop wood, and hence the term chop wood and carry water. That's kind of where it came from, as a metaphor for achieving liberation, or what you might want to call enlightenment, doing the most ordinary things. Okay, that's what it's meant by that. That supposedly came from Huinang, who had some insight into the practice of the Dharma and the practice of jhana as a daily experience, moment-to-moment experience. So the Dharma, which is what this really is, Vinaya is often translated as discipline. Vinaya is the discipline part of it, and there's a lot of rules of galore, like simple things like you don't urinate in the campsite, so to speak. I mean, that makes sense, right? Even some of the practices within the Buddhist tradition came about out of a common sense of what was occurring at the time. So it's context related. Like, for one thing, there are some traditions that they sit in meditation for three months at a time. Now, during the Buddha's era, that was during the monsoon season, where for 3 to 4, sometimes 6 months, it's severe weather conditions, right? So, roads were blocked, trees were down, they couldn't navigate around the countryside, blah, 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 blah. So the Buddha told his disciples, look, sit your butts down here and let's engage in a different kind of practice. Now, that's it. That sounds reasonable, but this has become a major practice in some schools of Buddhism, that for 3 months, sometimes 6 months out of a year total, you sit in meditation for a long period of time, okay? So there were a lot of rules, and that's the Vinaya. My teacher, Venerable Wanji, was especially focused on Vinaya, observing the right rules. So the Buddha taught many different, before I do that, let me talk about the 4 Ps, right? Which is selecting the right place, assuming the right posture, whether it's standing, walking, lying, whatever, and practice and recognizing what the problem areas are and all of that. The Buddha taught many different types of what you would call meditation, each designed to become a particular problem, to overcome a particular problem or develop a particular psychological state. So using the term meditation, it's been relegated to sitting with your legs crossed and breathing and trying to clear your mind. That is not it, again. But the 2 most common and useful types of meditation are mindfulness of breathing and loving kindness meditation, known as metta, loving kindness. Buddhism began by encouraging its practitioners to engage in jhana, or mindful contemplation. That is, developing a full consciousness of all about you and within you, whether seated in a particular posture or simply going about one's daily life. This is the kind of meditation that the Buddha himself engaged in under the Bodhi tree and is referred to in the 7th step of the Eightfold Noble Path. Okay, so this is more of the same. Okay, and let's see. Okay, and having said all that, if you choose to begin somewhere, you can begin by sitting in a simple chair, keeping your back straight or erect if you can. And the more traditional postures are the lotus position, sitting on a pillow with each foot upon the opposite thigh, and variations such as the half lotus, and what have you. There's various ways you can approach that. And many use a meditation bench in which they kneel and then place the little bench underneath your behind. But meditation is also done while standing, like I said, slowly walking, lying on the floor, or even in a recliner. So you can engage in that anywhere you want. Traditionally, the hands are placed loosely, palms up, one on top of the other, and with the thumbs lightly touching. This is called the Cosmic Mudra. And I think I have there it is. This is the Cosmic Mudra. And the term mudra means seal or mark or gesture. Is a symbolic ritual, gesture or pose in Hinduism, Jainism, Buddhism. While mudras involve, some mudras involve the entire body. It's what in the yogi tradition they call asanas, which most are performed with the hands and fingers. Now, these mudras or seal mark or marks, you know, it forms the elemental keys to consciousness. In other words, there's a huge energetic implication here that by doing it, you increase your energy vibration, or you increase your vibrational quality. The mudra depicted here is known as the Jhana mudra, which represents the triple Zen, the triple gem, meaning the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, or the monastic order. All right. So that's what this represents. And this mudra is one of my favorites in particular because it deepens your consciousness in terms of practice while you're doing it. Supposedly, the Buddha used this mudra during his jhana under the Bodhi tree, which led to his awakening. As I said, this particular mudra deepens the meditative experience. The position of the hand forms a triangle. And again, it represents the triple gem, which is the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Okay. These are more dynamic forms. This is a more dynamic form of meditation that we use in martial arts, but nonetheless, it's a meditation. It's very powerful. I dare most people to do it for more than 2 minutes because of the posture. All of your muscles is pitched at a particular tone. And after about 1.5 minutes, you feel every muscle in your body screaming. All right. So my teacher used to have us stand in this thing for 30 minutes, sometimes an hour. And people are passing out while they're standing, holding it. It used to be very interesting. But we all got to the point where we can actually do it. Okay. So I'm not going to get into what problems are. The next thing I'm going to talk about is what is a mantra. So besides everything else you're doing, in terms of the moment-to-moment mindful practice, depending on your position and posture, there is the mudra, right, which is a seal. And then there's the mantra, which means mind vehicle. Mantra is an instrument of the mind. That's what it is. It's a powerful sound or vibration used to enter a deep state of consciousness during meditation or to promote the moment-to-moment mind. So the mantra, they say that Sanskrit is has a very high vibrational quality, okay? You don't necessarily have to know what it means, okay? You don't. But just emitting the sound raises your vibrational level. And that's really what it's about. It's not about meditating and doing what's known as a manifestation meditation, where you manifest things and objects in your daily life. Yeah, I guess that's valid too, because so as within, so without, right? So I guess that's okay. But the goal of all of these practices is to elevate your consciousness and your vibrational level so that you can attract what you need in your life. You don't necessarily ask for it, because getting on your knees and praying for something that you don't have just tells the universe that you're coming from a place of lack, and you get more of that, which is nothing. Okay? If you want to manifest things in your life, it should be an affirmation. And you would say something like, I command and manifest a Porsche, whatever, and this is the color of it. This is what the leather should look like. This is what it should smell like. This is what, you get into details, go to a dealership and test drive a Porsche, sit in it, see yourself in it. That's what manifesting things in your life is all about. So you command it, you don't beg for it. Okay? So this mantra I'm going to focus on a little bit. It's called the Heart Sutra, or the Prajna Paramita Hridaya. It's known as the heart of the perfection of wisdom. It's one of my favorite sutras, and it's very long, but it's encapsulated in this simple mantra. And that is Gate Gate, Hara Gate, Hara Samgate, Bodhi Swaha, which means gone, gone, gone beyond, gone altogether beyond. Oh, what an awakening. That's what the mantra says in English. But again, it's the vibrational quality of emitting the songs gate gate, parasam gate, bodhi swaha, right? As a form of meditation, and I mean a form of numerous types of meditation, you can recite the mantra 108 times or whenever it comes to mind as you move through your day, all right? Like I said, it elevates your vibrational quality. All right, and the rest of this isn't really that important, but you know, I wanted to take this time to really record what I went over last night on Facebook that didn't turn out too well. So this is going to be posted on YouTube and additionally on Facebook. Once I post it on YouTube, I will click the link and move it over to Facebook so that if you want to view this, you certainly can. So thank you all once again. I appreciate the opportunity to share what my take on meditation is, and namaste.